Good afternoon, good evening. I'm going to be discussing the case study in regards to Terrence Howard and Marvel Films Fallout. My name is JC Flores, and I am a student at the Entertainment Business Master's Program at Full Sail University. So without further ado, let's begin. So about the deal. Coming off the success of Hustle and Flow, Terrence Howard was the first actor to be signed on to work in the 2008 Marvel film Iron Man. He was reported to make $8 million in a 3 motion picture deal. And Marvel was in search for an actor to play War Machine, and Terrence Howard came through to play the character. He was the highest paid actor in the first Iron Man film. The problem issue was when Marvel wasn't looking to fulfill on their agreement to Howard by cutting the figure he was originally quoted to make down to $1 million. Another issue lied in the decision for Terrence to take $1 million off his first deal so he could help Robert Downey Jr. be casted to play Tony Stark and secure the role of Iron Man. The interest. So Terrence Howard was looking to receive the original amount promised to him in the Marvel film Iron Man. He was counting on the salary as he was only focused on delivering his best work onto the franchise. Since Howard's character went to having smaller screen time in the sequel of Iron Man, Marvel's underlying interest changed from the original negotiated amount down to $1 million. Terrence Howard signed on to work a 3 motion picture deal for $8 million originally negotiated by Marvel Films. Marvel's bargaining position changed from the $8 million down to $1 million for the second picture film. So a few concepts that I would like to go over with you guys today is basically the zero-sum theory, the imbalance of power, and the dirty tricks. So in regards to the zero-sum theory, essentially what ended up happening was that we can see that this deal went from non-zero to a zero-sum option immediately after the first Iron Man deal was released in 2008. Regardless on how the deal went through, there was miscommunication as Robert Downey Jr. and Marvel, as well as other parties involved with Marvel, basically they were the ones that profited from it, and it became extremely competitive between both parties, but concluded with only one victor. Marvel ended up being the victor because they went on to continue to make more and more films, as opposed to Terrence Howard not being part of that. And I'm going to go into more detail in regards to that too. There was also an imbalance of power, that was enforced onto Howard from Marvel. Marvel used their status as well as their environmental power to hinder the original contract they agreed upon with Terrence Howard. It became more about them staying in the original contract and kicking Howard out. They became very dominant and less empowering. So essentially, since Marvel, was on the culmination of just growing in their status, with media consumption, with the consumer consumption, basically, they came in and basically, used their status to push Howard out. There wasn't really any kind of mutual benefit out of that, just because of the fact that since they had such a status, they figured they can go into the contract at any time that they felt would not convenient for them, and renegotiate the terms that were originally negotiated. And then on the third concept, the dirty tricks, Marvel played the dirty tricks card after the release of the first Marvel Iron Man film. They negated to follow through on their original deal with Terrence Howard by not wanting to fulfill or pay Terrence Howard the salary they originally agreed upon. Playing the dirty tricks card allowed them to get away with their actions towards the original agreement. And then as we move on to the next slide here, what went well was that Terrence and Marvel agreed to an original salary of $8 million to be paid and distributed among the 3 picture deal. Terrence Howard was able to get Robert Downey Jr. to be casted as Tony Stark in the film. Terrence received the $4.5 million that he was promised for the first film, but he was willing to renegotiate with Marvel and take a $1 million pay cut from that first film, just so that they can really push and consider in hiring Robert Downey Jr. to play the role as Tony Stark, which they actually ended up doing. And then what went wrong? Well, Marvel didn't honor the original agreement with Terrence Howard. On the second movie, a sequel, that they were looking to compensate Howard with $1 million due to his character written to have smaller screen time by Jon Favreau and the screenwriter, which was about a 50 to 80% pay cut. There were also no reported mediation to help if both sides couldn't reach an agreement. If both parties had a difficult time to restructure the agreement, then a mediator could have assisted in providing insight both parties may have missed during the preliminary negotiations. There were no sunset clauses or dispute resolution policies to help reimburse both sides should one party decide better to amend the original details of the negotiated agreement. Overall, on the agreements, yes, there was an original agreement that was negotiated between Terrence Howard and Marvel. Originally, Howard was going to be paid a salary of $8 million. It's a lot of money. That was going to be distributed through 3 films. But the final agreement wasn't reached because Marvel was able to go back and amend the agreement at their discretion. The final agreement was left at a stalemate and didn't foster a long-term deal because Howard was replaced with Don Cheadle for the lower salary that Marvel proposed to Howard of $1 million after the release of the Iron Man film. I don't really see a window of opportunity to renegotiate in the future because of Marvel's commander communication style. They took charge of the entire negotiation without discussing options for plausible cancellation should the actor fall or fail to perform according to the standards of the director and the film company. There were also not enough provisions in place to protect Howard's bargaining position and underlying interests. Marvel could have placed a position of easy acceptance status with Howard and say, hey, even though we can only pay you $1 million for the second, we could foster spin-off to your own character's film and compensate more, then. And, I was able to grasp that concept after reading The Secrets of Power Negotiation by Roger Dawson, which is an insightful read because it provides a lot of theories and principles that we could apply in the modern sense. And you can find more in regards to positioning for an easy acceptance on page 101 of the book. So what's most alarming is how Howard's attorneys failed to impose a sunset clause, a dispute resolution policy, or liquidated agreement. Had they have done that this way, since Marvel violated and breached their original agreement, Howard could have been compensated for the loss of time he could have used to pursue other film opportunities. To be quite honest, it didn't seem that Howard and his parties had a BATNA, or, basically a backup alternative, to a negotiated agreement plan. Should that have been in place, he could have been compensated at a prorated cost, and at least he could have pursued the other films, that were being offered to him during the filming of, the first Iron Man and the second Iron Man. Well, this concludes my presentation in regards to the negotiated situation between Marvel and Terrence Howard, and I hope that you enjoyed it as much as I did in investigating all of this material. You guys have a great evening and a blessed week. Thank you.